Hello, hello, everybody. You're here with Nathaniel and Stephanie again, ready to have some conscious conversation about some things that are going on in the world and just what we could all share and talk about together. We were kind of just planning to make this one a little bit looser today, and we've got two things in mind we'd like to share, and we'll see what unrolls and how the conversation flows from there. I have finished a book that we mentioned at one point called Existential Kink, and so I'll kind of talk about that a little bit and put it in my own words. And Stephanie, I think, has been reading a book as well. She might kind of give us a little bit about, but then we also thought we'd take a chance to introduce Arya in this session, which is an Arcturian being that Stephanie is able to channel, and I'll let her give a little bit of her intro on that as well. So, hey, it's just good to see you this morning, Stephanie. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. It's nice and hot in Florida.
Oh yeah. It's warming up here in North Carolina too. It's all shorts and tank tops weather now.
Yeah, definitely. Flip-flops and the rest of it.
So what strikes you as a starting point? You want me to talk
Let's
about
do
my
the
book
book.
first?
Let's do the book, and then I'll tell you about this book that I just heard about that I've started to read, and then everybody can meet Aria. I think that will be fun. They haven't seen that
Well,
yet.
what do you say we toggle back and forth since we've already teased this book before, so why don't you tease the book that you've started and then I'll kind of talk about mine and we can dialogue about what the one I finished.
All
And
right.
then that'll bounce
Can
it back.
you Google something while we're talking or no?
Yeah, I can. Yep, go
I don't
for it.
know the author, but I've started reading a book called Atomic Habits, but I'm actually doing it, on Audible. I have Audible and I'm been doing audiobook stuff and I'm trying to get really good habits in place. And one of
James
those
Clear.
habits I'm trying to start is walking 10,000 steps every day. So
Okay.
listening to audiobooks while I'm walking is a way to get those steps in or while I'm, doing chores or house cleaning. And so this book was written, and then I only know the beginning because I've only done the first little bit, was written by a man. Did you find out who it's written by?
James Clear.
James Clear. All right. So when he was in high school, he was a baseball player and he was really on his way to becoming really probably well known and doing very well. And somebody threw a bat. You know how the coach says never throw a bat, and it hit him in
Okay.
the face and it broke his nose and it caused all kinds of like shoved his nose up into his brain and it took him like months and months to recover. And so he never ended up having the career he would have had in baseball after somebody, hit him in the face with the bat.
Hmm.
Um, and he was in a coma and he almost died and all this kind of stuff. And so he started these habits when he got to college, and he noticed that if he was very good on his habits, that he wouldn't have been able to come back, and he did very well at a lower level of college, like a baseball team, and he was like one of the best 33 players in the country for one of the colleges he went to, and that was about as far as his ability would take him after the injury, right?
Gotcha.
And so he's talking a lot about how do you know to get to your peak performance. And he's because due to his injury, he couldn't do more than that amount. And
Hmm.
so I think that's really an important thing is to know, are we pushing hard enough? Because in society today, most people are not pushing hard enough at all, in my opinion. What do you think?
Um, I'm sure there's a spectrum where there's some people pushing too hard. You probably have a few that are pushing super hard in ways, and you probably have a lot that have been uh, in a way entranced or duped into not pushing or trying at all.
I
You know,
agree.
it's
I
almost
agree.
it's like a two-way split. Let's keep people that are really type A focused in the wrong direction, and people that are type B, let's just relax them out with bread and circuses. So I
Right.
do
There's
think we
definitely
have a
a lot of that going on. And so he's just the book Atomic Habits is this idea of how do you have these powerful habits that move you forward. And if you, because what you've got to have is you've got to have habits in place that you do every day, especially with this much chaos happening. So, for example, you at a time when you weren't super physically muscular the way you are now, but then you created a new habit. So, how often, what is your habit for your
yeah.
physique these days?
Yeah, so I mean, it is like I've heard the example like if you do something for 28 days consistently, it becomes a habit, and the gym is definitely a habit that is it's an every other day habit. It's on a schedule, it's on a routine. It's just something that you feel natural about. And when I compare, think about when I first started going to the gym or whatnot. it is foreign, alien, unfamiliar, all of those things. And you kind of, just like anything, you tell, someone how to get better at it, you practice. The more you practice being in the space, being in the environment, working through the processes, it becomes secondhand, it becomes a habit. Um, and as you're discussing those things, I think an interesting parallel that my astrological mind makes is that idea of these habits. Where would that file? That's our Virgo, and it's opposite and complementary to all of the Pisces. The Pisces is that open-ended flow of everything everywhere, all melting all to one. And then the Virgo is that idea of a regiment, a routine, a habit, a pattern for self-improvement, for more effective service and efficiency out in the world and functioning. And so that it seems like, that idea of atomic habits is almost like it's got an Aquarian ring in the sense of like bang, dynamic Uranian, but also solid, structured Saturnian. The idea of like blasting into place one, two, three major habits that you commit to and adhere to. And if you do that, it's almost like putting braces on your life. When we put braces on our teeth
Right,
and you
right, right,
straighten
right.
them into an alignment over time, if you create two or three strong habits that you adhere to, that's going to have a permanent, more permanent, enduring kind of realignment that it does with your flow and all of those things. I mean, I think that's a really powerful concept. It seems like that book is articulating, just driving home that point of what is that big commitment? What is an atomic habit? So
Right. And I'm a lot older than you are, and as we age, I'm seeing so many of my elderly clients ending up in a really bad situation where their balance is off and they have too much weight and they end up in living out the last 7 years of their life in assisted living in a horrible way. And that's definitely not the way I would like my future to look. I want to be, partying at 93 and be like William Shatner. I want to be hitting it hard and going to space when I'm 90. I
yeah,
mean, that kind of idea, like really having a life fulfilled and life worth living. And so this book has a lot to do with, and I haven't gotten into it yet. A lot of it's the research. He's actually gathered the research and what does that show. And I do believe, even if you go all the way back to Benjamin Franklin and his 13 virtues that he had, he was like one of the first self-help guys ever. And he did one virtue a week every week for 13 weeks, and 13 times
yeah.
4 is all the weeks of the year. And so originally he only had 12 habits. And one of his friends said, Benjamin Franklin had a big ego. And one of his friends said you should put humility on there. So to make his friend happy, he added humility on there, which I thought was cute.
That
Because he had
is
issues.
fun.
So that was
That's
fun.
fun.
Yeah, and so, I think
Virtue, humility, Virgo.
yeah, with modern society, what we feed our brains with will shape your future, and we are a media consuming culture, and I don't think at this point we can really deny that. And so if we are going to consume media, what type and who's the policeman at the gate for that type of media that we're consuming, right?
Yeah.
And so this is kind of a very practical book, but I'm kind of fascinated by the book you read as well because existential kink is sort of the far end of that Aquarian Piscean energy, right? Like,
hmm Oh, oh,
yes,
oh. Well, you're talking about this book being in the
yeah,
Aquarian.
yeah. The
This
idea is,
book, this book is
or is it
Pluto
more Scorpio?
Scorpio.
Scorpio. I
This
was
one
going to
is
go to
all
Scorpio.
Pluto Scorpio.
Okay.
Um, before I get into it, though, that last thing you said about the media we consume, the same way like diet and nutrition, all of it's so funny, like the habits, the virtue, humility, all of these Virgo themes that are related to our health, all of our perfecting our personality. The media, there's so much in the media and the movies and the TV and stuff that I have thought of like junk food. There's a lot of junk food that is trashy and just like it's distractive, and whether or not it's intentional or innocuous and like not intent, there's a quality with some things that it drives us towards sensationalism. There's like some kind of addictive quality, and I think that there have been the same way marketing wants to push and pull what our desires are. I think we've seen that in those industries, but I also think there is something emerging where there might be more healthy programming on the horizon, or like
There's a shift
uh
coming. There's a shift
yeah,
coming.
there's a shift coming where like all the things that we've seen and what I would just put under the umbrella of the darker side of Hollywood, the darker side of Hollywood does seem like it will pop. And when it does, like a lot more utopia, euphoria, responsibility about how we're wielding that imagination paintbrush. Because that's, I mean, we've made it seem like imagination is, just this, not real thing, but they're the people, the Imagineers and the Disney Hollywood magic studios are painting the imagination and the vision of the collective. And I think there's been a lot of paint strokes that have been putting people in not so great places that we could employ in a more improved and efficient practice once we get the proper humility. So I'm excited about that. Turning into the book, though, the flavor definitely Pluto and Scorpio. When we think about a kink and the psychology and taboo and all of that, that's in that vein. Um, and as I told you too, I actually was familiar with this author, Carolyn Elliott, from years ago. There was something of hers that caught me through her website or her writing. And so it was kind of interesting when I was like, oh, I have heard of her before, and I've enjoyed her writing and the way that she articulates things. And it's great in this book, and the examples and all of the metaphors. And if I was to sum up kind of part of the practice, there are parts where I'm like, aha, I kind of already do that. And I feel blessed to have a little bit of a natural something, an urge in my life to find the beauty in the dissonance and to find, the light in the dark and all of that. And so it's a process that seems like it's about balancing and merging these opposites, holding the tension of opposites in this neutral way. And she even defines it through like an alchemical process. Um, I'm like trying to go through. I should have put some notes too. God, there we go. Got right to it. Um, the solve et coagula formula. Like when we talk about law of attraction, and she talks about how she did that for years and felt like it was poo-poo because they say, think about what you want and you should get what you want and you feel what you want. And like, why aren't we getting all the things we want? And she's made a case that there's an opposite but equal inertia in the psychology of not wanting it. There's fear around it in some way, and there's some way that we secretly, even to ourselves, because no one would say they want, something that would be classically a negative experience, but that we in some way are getting off or getting something out of it, even though we won't let ourselves enjoy it. We keep these negative or dark or heavy taboo things in our field as long as there's some payoff, if it's keeping us from making too much money, it's keeping us at a level where we get this excitement and thrill of how am I going to pay my bill next month? Or there's some thrill that's kinky. Like, no, who would enjoy that we don't wouldn't consciously say we enjoy either, but we keep it manifesting in our life. And
Now,
so
the way I mean, yeah, I agree. I agree.
the more that we tune in to like, wait, what I keep manifesting this weird situation with my money, with my love, with my job, that we look like, okay, what do I really like about that? And we get clear about like, well, by creating this sabotaging situation, destructive situation, it prevents me from having to deal with the responsibility of this, that, and so there's payoff. And when we can phrase it and flip it and turn it into these funny little um enjoyments, when we can learn to see, oh, I love that, oh yes, reject me again, that makes me feel so special, or oh yeah, tell me I'm not worth that much money so I can there's a way that we get off on it in it with a sense of humor that resolves it.
She's talking about neutralizing the energy.
Yes, and it's so funny. Like I love the how the metaphors of the alchemical process relates to the chemistry of the soul, and Neptune is what rules chemistry. And if we think about all of that dissolution and dissolving, solving, melting everything, neutralizing everything, it's looking at that as like psychological processing. It's also astral and soul related, that elite, there's the way that we solve things and like neutralize and then coagulate. Like there's something where you release all the tension and we keep ourselves locked up in some kind of tension of opposites where we want this thing and we don't like that one and that one's bad. But when we look at, the rhythms in life, when you can enjoy all the rhythms, wow, that's neat and exciting. Wow, what that's neat and exciting. Then it stops being so extreme and charged in either direction. And so there's more of a neutrality about them all. And then that neutrality is what creates more direct free will choice. Because before that, it's polarized. I'm chasing this and I'm avoiding that. And so there's a tug between the two. But as soon as and we want this so bad, I want it so bad. And this is icky. When we look at this is icky and think and like relax it into like why and what it's doing and like make it funny. And then when we go chasing it in a sense almost, when we lean into it, when we embrace it, it's like melting a shadow. It makes things lighter, easier, funnier, simpler. And then it just kind of it's not as important. And then the other one's not so far away and it balances. And so that's what I
Have you
would say is the process that she's articulating through this book with lots of examples and scenarios. But
have you tried it?
unkinking,
Have you tried it? Have you tried to
honey, I would
implement
say,
what you heard?
have I tried it? I think I do so much subconsciously with it. It's happening. Like I can go ahead and testify that, just from reading this book and
Yeah.
talking about it with people and having it in my life, I've been dealing with it and I've been looking at some of the kinky situations that I manifest and look at the why and what do I really want and why do I want this and why is this and there's been a lot clearing. I have a lot, just personally, not going into my own chart and all. It's a bright time to look at, these themes of like healing, the solve aspect of things, all of this. So it's been right on time. Formally, like I don't I haven't sat down. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the process. Let's do this. And I haven't done it formally, but there's just situations that I will slip into my own contemplative meditation to kind of unravel and
Right, right, right.
discharge. Um, but I do think it's helpful. It's got a lot. I mean, I'm more about understanding the philosophical point. Once I get the philosophical point in something or the meaning or then I think I probably am a little free form in how I style the practice. But she's written it so that it's accessible for everybody. If you need step by step and like until it's, until you can create a routine and a habit and a pattern, I think she puts it together very well.
Nice,
But it
nice.
was a lot of fun. And I'd still have to continue to digest some of it, and I've written notes in it and whatnot. So I'm sure it will continue to influence how I think about things because it's all I recognize it like I talked all the astrological symbolism and it is so reminiscent of what Pluto is and does, this dark taboo place of desire that is bad, but also simultaneously attached to our sense of transformation, soul authenticity, and our true power. And there's power in owning all of that. I mean, it's like the idea that God came here to experience everything through us. And God is, where we can't put the less that we put a judgment on things sometimes, um, the the more that can flow. But I mean, there's also I realize there's not a part of the way that we do judge things and draw the lines and such is ways that we just shape our experience, our personality. And I've also speculated through this book that some of the kinks that we have, like when somebody's got a real problem with money or a real problem with love, a real problem with their career, all of these psychological kinks, she doesn't get so much into the karma. There's karmic relationships about why different individuals are hung up and kinked up related to their worth, related to their relationship, whatever it is. Everybody comes in with these kinks that define them, but we're constantly shedding that which is false in the identifications so that there's more brighter phoenix light soul authenticity. And when we own the good, the bad, and the ugly, everything shines brighter and we have more power, more free will to carve it out the way that we want, in alignment with God, in alignment with Source, without hiding, suppressing, doing all these kinky things
Right,
that
right, right,
we
right.
have to or think we do. But
All right. Well, we'll definitely find that interesting. If we're going to bring
so
Arya in for a little bit and do
let's
some
do it.
talking, what explain to them, just give them the short,
So
what's
I
your
will give
experience like with Arya, not
I'm
super long.
I'm I'm gonna give my quick and dirty kind
Give me
of
the down and dirty of it, honey.
let's say quick and dirty or high and bright kind of
Yeah, yeah.
paradoxical view of what Arya is. From my understanding, Arya is a fifth dimensional Arcturian ET being that you have been channeling for quite a while now familiarly.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and the you have described it in a sense of like just a wise older grandmother. I look at it, I know that semantically Arya is something of her own and not your higher self and that part of you, but there's a way in which, when you're talking to you and it's channeling, it it has elements of that, of like the older, wiser grandmother with just like a wider scope, a wider lens, and just that whole phenomenon of channeling and mediumship and like altered states relates to that Piscean energy, which we know you swim in quite well, of being able to take the ego and kind of put it to the side and blend and blur with something else, something more, tuning into, some kind of sort of like
Right,
an
right.
antenna to get a different
Yeah,
reception. So I would
it's
say
similar to, yeah.
Aria is reception with this fifth dimensional Arcturian intelligence to which you have a relational and karmic affinity.
Yes, I do indeed. I do indeed. All right. Well, I'm gonna so basically I have a British accent when I do it. It's gotten very posh over the years, and I'll let her sort of talk and we'll just sort of dialogue with her. I mean, in the old days she would just answer questions, but as time has moved on and consciousness has evolved, she's gotten much more, I think, conversational. And we'll
You know what
just
and this is how I would interpret that in a sense. Like when it comes to beings, and this could be its own conversation, but the lighter the being, the more it's like angels. And I know ETs and angels are different things we're talking about in a sense, but angels will wait for you to ask, to
yeah.
be invited to, ask for
Same thing
things.
with shamans. Shamans do the same.
And so, waiting to have a question asked is a sense of like, I'm up here in some sense and I don't want to interfere. Things that are on a lower path are trying to get you to agree and interfere in some way. But what I think it could symbolize in that the conversation has become less necessitated by question and more of a dialogue is that I think consciousness with humanity and just in general as we're going forward, we're getting ready to I won't say exactly be equal with ETs, but like hold hands and talk and see and get that, hey, there are other things we can talk to. So I think it's
Right, right,
becoming
right.
more conversational for humanity in general rather than something where
Yeah,
like we need to really hold back for a lot.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna bring her in. You ready?
Yep, let's go for it.
We'll just jump off to the race. Hopefully somebody's still watching this far into the video. That's the other thing. People will watch it for like 20 seconds and they're gone. Like my son,
And
he has his YouTube channel and he'll say, Mom, they don't, and he's doing videos that last 60 seconds and he says he'll lose half the people before you hit 30 seconds. It's like, really?
you
Like,
get what I'd liken that to when I have put out like ads for things that like housemates and whatnot. I've always been accused of writing too much and nobody's going to read that, but I find that whoever needs and aligns and resonates for
right, they
whatever
will. The person
finds
that
it.
needs the message will find it. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
so
right, you
it'll be
ready?
fun for its fun.
All right. I intend are you. This is our the Auxiliary Protectorate. Another thing, but we'll just do the Protectorate today.
Well, welcome to the conversation,
Thank
Aria.
you. She's got her hair up today. I had to put her hair up today. She usually has it down. Today we put it up. It's
Well,
easier.
how have things been going afar?
Depends on your definition of afar.
Well, where are you at in
Right
the
now I'm on the
planetary?
right now I'm on the intergalactic ship, which is now rotated around your planet. It's that long black cigar ship that people talk about a lot. It
Yeah,
actually
I know.
looks like the ship they did in Star Trek 4. That long black cigar ship for anybody that's remembers that film.
I've
Uh,
heard of the cigar-shaped ship before. But
right,
you're
right.
not talking about that. There was that asteroid of ways back, the Anamanahua or whatever they named it, but there was a lot of
No,
buzz that it was
no,
that.
this is an intergalactic ship that used to be out past Mars and has now come back to Earth, and things started to act up in Israel. First time in decades and decades that the intergalactic ship, the big ship, decided to come and be in orbit at Earth in case it needed to be close to intervene. And so
Okay.
I'm on that ship, and of course I have my own personal ship, and I'm here today just to see who's around and who might be interested in evolution of consciousness and might
Well,
have questions to see where we go.
I would definitely be interested in any kind of intergalactic planetary update, and I would
I
offer,
figured
I
you would.
guess, um, the intel that I've heard through all of my weird news sources and all has been very positive that,
A
things
lot of it
are
is positive. I mean, let's look at Brian Johnson for a hot minute, right?
okay.
Brian Johnson owned Venmo. He sold it, and he's spending $2 million a year of his hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. He wants to be the oldest living human in history, and he's hired, all sorts of doctors and a team to test everything, test how he sleeps, test what he eats, and he's really trying to explore what does it take to really fuel the body and what does the body need. And so, but that's happening across the board. You're going to see so many med beds and technologies released to the point that people are going to be kind of, I think, overwhelmed by it, probably inundated. And how do you know what's a good one and what's a bad one? Well, use your intuition, see what resonates. And what works for one person may not work for another person. It's a time for everybody to really trust themselves, evolve their consciousness, figure out what works for you. For example, a keto diet is perfect for someone that's got the genetics for it, but not for someone that needs to be a vegan.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's such genetic variability. You've really got to pay attention to your own genetics. And that is coming along fast, how much you can understand food allergies and things like that. So the most important thing is the speed and pace with which the changes are occurring. That's the thing.
Gotcha. Hold on just a second. My battery needs to be plugged in.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've been
No.
known to drain a battery or two.
It's just it's just me. Plugged in. All right. Didn't want it to go out all of a sudden.
No, that would have been interesting. People be like, oh, the government has stopped us talking to Iowa. That's what everybody would think.
That would have been
Be
the
like,
rumor.
oh my gosh, let's go down the conspiracy path.
Yeah, well, the whole idea of the new technologies and that idea, I didn't even think about experimental, or we may have to deal with a little bit of an intuitional litmus test as far as what technologies are good or right for us as that's released. And like I do think, the investigation, and there's a lot with technology to come out, and I think there's going to be a lot to decide how much and what is good use of technology and what's not. Um, it has seemed like all of the warmongering and the hate spewing on a global scale is drying up, is closing out. I don't know what the rest of this year and this whole election and whatnot is, but it seems like on the precipice of all of this is like some kind of coming together on a global scale that is in the works behind the scenes is how we're gonna paint the history books from this. Like I feel like talk about behind the scenes and whatnot, that there's been a lot of agreement that we're not going to create more destruction. We're going to provide for a greater variety of life and healing and all of those things. And I know a lot of people aren't feeling that to be the case right now, but that does seem like a positive expectation that's coming. And I thought I would kind of check on that with you as far
Well,
as
if you look at a farm, like you've got you're out in the country and you drive past an old farm building and it's falling apart, it's dilapidated and it looks terrible, right? And you're
Mhm.
like, no, I need a brand new farm there. I need to build the new barn and it needs to look beautiful. Are you going to try to repair that piece of crap? No, you're not. You're not going to try to do that. You're going to remove it. You're going to remove all of that broken, rotted wood. You say, yeah, I cannot fix this. This is done. And where you're really going to see everything disappear is education system. In a decade, almost no one will be going to college or university. What's the point? They can get everything they need through AI, through the information on the internet. And the next generation doesn't care about that. And you're going to see a lot of services and careers move over to actually helping people directly in
Mhm.
direct fashions out of necessity in many, many ways. And so a lot of things are going to shift. It's like to how you interact with each other, how things approach in the world. And it really is going to be like a two world theory where you're going to have a lot of people on the cutting edge, like you and, your partner and Stephanie's trying, where you're really going to repair your health and say, no, I'm not going to be like those that are falling apart completely. And for a lot of people, their experience will be horrible, absolutely horrible. And that's what they're experiencing. Now they could make a different choice, but for whatever reason, they're not making that choice.
Yes, and going into that stuff, Aria, um, I was talking about this book, and there is when we think about how those people that are having a horrible experience, could it be that they are like in a way I see it being like stuck by karma, that like people are in a sense choosing their own suffering or causing their own suffering in some way because it they feel like it is due, and to some degree by past things it's been necessitated until they wake up and choose differently, but people are just so stubborn in ways about what will wake them up or what will let them heal. Why do people stay so stuck?
Well, what does that mean? First of all, to wake up from where you are stuck means that your consciousness has dropped too low. When your
Hmm.
consciousness drops very low, you allow abuse to happen. You get in a bad way. A lot of dark, terrible things happen, wars, and all of these horrible things can happen, and people living and dying very badly. And they slowly end up there, and they're not choosing to evolve their consciousness. Sometimes there's a past life karma there. Maybe they were in a battle or something that really affected them this lifetime. But that's part of why you're here. Part of why you're here is to release trauma and
Hmm.
to say, no more, I'm done with that stuff. And I've decided the rest of my life, I'm going to at least be neutral. I'm not going to hurt other people. I'm going to figure out how do I be nice and loving to myself. Well, gee,
Hmm.
what's this thing you're in, this body? You've got to be nice to the body. And so, what does that mean on an ever changing environment? What is the right food? How much activity do you need? Because you are being bombarded by all kinds of toxins every day, all day. So,
Hmm.
you have to have a high level of adaptation and resilience. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So, you have to figure out, how do I do that? How do I create that? And as a result, you're going to end up 100 years from now with that culture being very health conscious, very not allowing wars and murders and things like that. But today's culture may be so shocked by where it's headed if they are still there, like people that are young today. Let's say you make 120 and you're only 20 years old today. 100 years from now, maybe towards the end of your life experience, you might be looking back and saying, man, I missed that freedom I had when I was young, because the more you link into a collective consciousness experience, it means everybody thinks the same. It doesn't mean people think differently. It
Hmm.
means they think the same. So, but if that same is healthy and healing and supportive, isn't that better than, violence and
This
war?
gets
And
this gets into a paradox of um the idea of individuating into being like a unique individual versus being part of the herd hive group, which is a tension between a Leo and Aquarius archetype in a sense, merging that the group, the herd, and then the special individual. And in ETs and civilizations, my understanding is that, humanity has been very much, like a wild flower full of variety. Earth is this land of infinite variety and differences and creativities and all this, and that a lot of ETs, such as the Arcturians, are they not more like a hive mind where they have individuality, but they all share in, this telepathic rapport. So it's a oneness, like, and thinking about both, and that like there is a sense of things evolving in one direction, but maybe it's both ways, and it's not that one is better than the other. And I'm not sure what the ET perspective on that might be like, especially, and you'd have to fill us in a little on like how ET culture is different between some that are more hive and collective, and what
Well,
ETs
I
have
think
more.
I mean, that's a lengthy, I don't have time for all that today. I mean, we can start it and finish it up next time. Hive
Right.
mind is too much like the Borg on Star Trek. And if you do that, you're going to
Yeah.
have a total misunderstanding. It's not like that at all. Um, and
Are there any ETs that are like the Greys or?
well, I can't answer 12 questions. I can answer this one question would take me 2 days to answer. Let me answer the way I need to answer, if that's all right.
I
Don't
got
ask me
you.
any more questions.
Okay.
Go back to the original question because now I'll go off on that and you'll never hear the answer. And then people watching will be like, well, why didn't she answer the question? Right.
Um, the core question is about the difference in hive mind or collective thinking
Right.
versus
Right. Right.
individual thinking.
So that's going to take me 5 to 10 minutes to answer where you don't get to talk at all. Otherwise, I
Gotcha.
can't do it. Because if you keep interjecting, you're going to take the branch of the conversation. I won't get the answer out. You
I
get what
feel
I'm
you.
saying?
I get excited.
I know you get excited, and I don't want a clarity. I'll stop when I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, do you understand where we're at thus far? Because it's important for those that are listening, anybody that made it this far. Um, because whether you like it or not, the ETs are here. Whether you like it or not, the ETs run the show. They run the show behind the scenes, right? Part of why I'm here is to try to help all of you understand that. And I know from your perspective, from the average person's perspective, they're not even sure that extraterrestrials are real, let alone that they run the show from behind the scenes, right? And that's already starting. They're trying to figure out how in the world do we tell humanity you're part of a bigger world, and that there are collective consciousnesses a lot more powerful than you could ever imagine, and that they do run the show in big ways. Well, as you're evolving your own consciousness, what it means is you actually have a lot more freedom to do that which you choose to do that you didn't have prior, right? And as you're evolving your consciousness, you're actually standing in your power and saying, you know what? I am going to choose independently to be who I am. Now, if you look at my culture, Arcturian culture, um, we kind of have the opposite problem, which you're insinuating, this opposite problem, which is not that we're a hive mind. We're not. A hive mind is there's one mind into which we're all plugged in, like the queen bee, like on the board, and we all just walk around as robots, and that is not the case. This is a lot more like the Oompa Loompas. Remember the Oompa
Okay.
Loompas in Willy Wonka?
Hmm.
It's more that there's a sameness of who we are. It's more that we are similar by our nature, that we are like the Amish. We're a lot more like the Amish, is a great
Okay.
comparison. We're not a hive mind, but there is an incredible, our frequency is so close to each other. You meet an Amish person, a lot of them, it's like they all seem sort of the same, don't they? You talk to one, you
That
talk to
makes
another,
sense.
it's like now they're almost exactly the same. But there's a collectiveness in their approach to how they live their lives.
Yes.
And they don't give a crap at all about what anybody else thinks about them. They go, oh, the English, they're so broken. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine being like them. They really can't. They really cannot imagine how you all live because, in their perspective, their life is so fulfilling and beautiful and amazing, right? Um, the problem with it, though, the problem with similarity of focus, you do need differentiation, you do need individuation, you do need a certain, oh, wow, that was a great idea from this person over here. What happens when your frequencies get too similar? Like maybe there's only
Ah,
a 10 point difference amongst all of you compared to really collective consciousness is if you have a you have a problem happen, right? There's this thing on my ship that's broken. Well, the problem that Arcturians have gotten into because they're so advanced is they look at things in a very certain way. And they can look and say, well, I've never seen that problem before. And without individual thought, without original thought, they'll never be able to fix that blasted ship because they don't see alternatives. What's great about humans
ah,
is you see 100 zillion alternatives, but you have so many alternatives, you're frozen. Too
mm,
many options. You don't know what to do. So there really needs to be a balance, and part of why a lot of the ETs are here is we've got to get back a little bit more of our ability to make an individual decision. Um, and you all need to figure out how to make more of a collective decision because you've taken it too far. You're like the Wild West people, right?
mhm.
It's everybody's got a gun and you're off on your own, and good luck with that. And it is sort of like that because you're not working cooperatively, or you haven't been until recently. And so you've got so many huge problems on this planet, you better figure it out. You've got to figure out how to make money not the end all be all of your existence.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it be great to just get rid of money and then everybody doesn't have it and everybody has the same amount and all of a sudden everybody can really do what they need to do? How fast would this planet change if money was out of the paradigm?
Are we on the precipice of finding out? Because I still feel
I,
like humanity.
we're headed towards trying to figure out how to get you free of the money paradigm. That's what I believe.
I've always heard it negatively called the Babylonian black magic or something, money black magic. But the idea that the way that we have used money and currency is very outdated, and I still astrologically have been thinking, before we get Uranus into Gemini, some kind of new foundation for economy that gets dispersed. So we'll see. I mean, something's got to improve,
Yeah,
even if
I
it's
mean,
not an
let's look at it
elimination.
this way. Let's say that we say, okay, here's the deal, right? Everybody gets $4,000 a month. Not 1,000 a month. That's you can barely get by on that, but everybody gets $4,000 a month, right? You get more if you have more children, right? You get that much money. You've got to get to a point where everybody has more than enough to have their basic needs met so that they then can do that. And then you've got to really get free of all of these addictions and things that are messing you up, messing up your
Yeah,
genetic code. And we've got to get back to a really healthy food and healthy nutrition. And these biohackers, they've got the right idea. And because if you don't do it, you're going to end up in a miserable, miserable position. And a lot of people are going to end up there and not understand how they got there. You're going to have some poor, pitiful 80-year-old person who's going to be locked up in an old age home that's really horrific for the next 7 years of their life, and they don't get why, right? And
yeah.
so people have got to get very proactive and accept the nature of where you are and how the room looks and say, this is how it is on planet Earth right now. In order to make it, you're going to have to really get good at discipline, get really good at this is how I'm going to approach my life. And life can be beautiful if you can get that discipline in there and get creative, and you can have the most fun ever. But you're going to have to let go of some really old patterns that just no longer serve you at all.
Oh yeah. I feel that coming.
Did that
I
help
think
at all?
it did. That was a really great explanation of it, which I can see and understand in different ways. The Amish metaphor was a very good way of thinking about it. It's kind of like when you have such a clear when a civilization has such a defined culture that everybody in that culture acts in the same way and it's been effective forever. I guess like you need the little bit of spontaneity and novelty that
Right,
comes from
right.
something that is foreign or alien
Right.
to it.
And we don't do it in a forced way. So here's the big difference. So we're not like Russia. We're not. People, they look at the genetic code early on, they say, okay, you've got a lot of genetic code that would make you a good diplomat, or you'd be really good, as a courtesan, or you'd be really good, as a mother, or you'd be really good as a school teacher, whatever it is, the equivalent, right? And so
Yes.
then that's presented at certain ages in our maturation period of, let's say I'm just going to compare it to human years. At 8 years old, what do you want to do? At 14, what do you want to do? And then at 21, what do you want to do? Well, you've got 3 ages there, right? That you kind of can figure it out. And then there's some jobs nobody likes. Let's say nobody likes taking out the garbage. Nobody wants to do that job. Well, then we all as a collective say, okay, everybody does 2 weeks a year. It's their job to take out the garbage, right? And we do that. There are some things that no one likes doing. And so we all do it. We don't argue about it. We just take turns. We were very logical about it. And if you've done something for 8 years and you say, I don't want to, like, I took care of those girls for so long, and trust me, I didn't enjoy that job a whole lot. I was dorm mother, and I'm not the motherly type. I am the diplomat, fly the spaceship type. And then I became, a really great crackerjack pilot, and I was flying all over the universe. That was my favorite job. But I had to go and tell the Arcturian Council, like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be in charge of these girls. And I waited more years than I should have, right? And I thought, I was younger then, that they'd all be upset and they were like, fine, we'll give it to somebody else. What do you want to do? I said, I want to go to the flying school. They're like, go try out and see if you make it. And I made it, of course. And then my whole life just took off from there, right? And as I've gotten older, I've picked up so many great skills from when I was dorm mother. I'm not dorm mother now. That helped with my diplomacy and other things, which I didn't realize at the time it was going to help. But you can learn from anything. You can learn from absolutely anything. But
Oh
no
yeah.
one should be doing some job or be miserable and not have a way out, right? And not be just feeding the corporation disaster and having your health destroyed by it when there's so many opportunities to get free of it. If you can just, you've got to figure out what works. You've got to be your own scientist. You've got to track the data. You've got to see, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? You're going to know if something does not work. Start paying more attention, right? When's the
That
last
makes a
time
lot of
you were
sense.
hungry, Nathaniel? When's the last time that you really knew what hunger was? Have you ever
Probably
gone two days without food to really know what hungry feels like? Have you ever done
it has to have been a past life.
it? You see my
That
point.
yeah.
If you're so disconnected from your own bodily signals that you have no idea what hungry looks like, right? How in the world are you going to make a decision about right food and wrong food? If your senses are so dulled by sugar and caffeine, how are you going to know what real food even tastes like? You're not going to know. So you're going to have to go through a period of detox to get healthy, to figure it out, and then once you do, real food that's the right food for your species and the right food will be amazing. You'll be like, oh my God, that's the best ever. And you, these days, you and your partner, you're pretty healthy.
Oh, there's still a lot I'm looking at for myself. There's a lot of personal little jewels in there. Still dialing it in. I think everybody's got such a unique biochemistry, and there's some things that are fairly standard health practices, and I think there's more nuance the deeper we go into it. So I think it's time for, humanity, the mind, healing consciousness is gonna come with healing of the physical body because they're connected. It's not like
We
they're
have to do it,
separate.
and sometimes people want me to talk about evolution of consciousness just like as an abstract, right? It's not abstract. It's real simple. This is the one you've heard me say this before. Eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired, and move, move, move. Emphasis on moving, because so much of this energy of the consciousness of evolution will make you not want to move. It'll make you sleepy. And so you've got to physically get out there and move. That's why I like the 10,000 steps. I think that's a great starting point. And there's so many people that are just not moving. You know, I heard a statistic, the average American's walking 4,500 steps a day. And I laughed so hard I could fall out of my chair. I was like, no, it's not. The average American's walking maybe 2,000 a day, if that. You need to be minimum 10,000, 14,000 is the sweet spot. I mean, you are a walking culture. If you go back into antiquity, people walked, walked, walked all the time as part of what was their natural experience. Now, you can't just get crazy about it if you've been walking 2,000 steps a day and jump to 14,000. You can't do that. But you can build up over time, incremental
Yeah.
improvement. And you can change your whole life if you start putting in incremental changes every day, like you have. Do you happen to know the change in your percentage body fat? You've done so well building muscle.
I don't have the numbers, but I know, I mean, it's time to look at it and get it checked again, I feel like. But it's just I've gone with I've had some healthy maintenance and routines in my own life, but I think there's some other places that I've still been more or less unconscious of or had certain blinders on that I'm looking forward to improving still too.
Well,
So
the four pillars that I always talk about, there's only four really: nutrition, moving, exercise. The right nutrition, the right exercise. The most important thing you'll ever do in your life is sleep. You've got to have adequate sleep. And then stress reduction. You've got to be free of stress. You've got to be neutral on stress, right?
well,
Those are your four.
that I've had some stress, but I'll talk with you later, Aria, about some of the stuff more personal. But I think that there's a lot of at least a consciousness about learning that started like astrologically for everybody, a little tidbit. Jupiter just went into Gemini, where it's going to be for at least about another year. And it's a symbolic of just a growth when it comes to learning variety, the conversation, communication, learning center is spreading out, growing. So wherever that is, and I have it relating a lot to my own healing journey, and sorting out different information. So we've got a lot of
Right,
information that's
right.
going to be coming in.
Well, why don't we end the call for today? But I'm going to stay on as RA so I can talk to you off camera so I can answer your questions. I don't want to have to go in the state and out of state again. But it's been great meeting everyone. Let's wrap it up for this
Yes,
spot, and then I'll hang
yes,
out here to talk to you.
awesome. Well, I hope everybody has had fun, and we'll go ahead and end this now, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for coming.